They didn't just doubt her. They dismissed her. When the Delta Force trial began, her name wasn't whispered with hope. It was laughed at behind closed doors. No one expected her to last a day, let alone make it to the final round. But there was something they didn't know. She wasn't here to impress anyone. She was here to prove a promise. One forged in blood, silence, and a mission that never made headlines. By the time the final shot was fired, the room wasn't laughing. They were standing, speechless, because the woman they tried to break, she didn't just pass the test. She rewrote it. They said she didn't belong, that she looked too fragile, that she was better suited behind a desk than on a battlefield. Her name was Ellie Maddox, and from the moment she stepped onto the training grounds at Fort Rexton, surrounded by towering men with thick necks and eyes sharp as razors, you could feel it, the silent judgment pressing against her like a storm front. She didn't flinch, though. She just stood there with a duffel bag that looked like it weighed more than she did, her boots scuffed, her brown hair tied back in a practical knot. No makeup, no fanfare, just quiet presence. It made some of the instructors chuckle. Others didn't bother hiding their smirks. Delta Force selection was considered one of the most elite, brutal, and mentally punishing trials in the world. And here she was, 5 feet 5 inches, barely 130 pounds, standing in a line of muscle-bound men who had already passed through hell in other units just to get here. The whispers started before the first test. Must be some sort of joke. Did she take a wrong turn into our compound? I give her 2 days. But Ellie didn't react. Not once. She just kept her eyes forward, like she wasn't hearing a word. And maybe she wasn't. Or maybe she'd heard it all before, and it just didn't matter anymore. The first few days were a storm of motion. Ruck marches with impossible weight, hand-to-hand combat drills that left faces bloodied and ribs bruised, navigation tests in pitch darkness through mountain terrain with only a compass and their will. Men twice Ellie's size collapsed from exhaustion. Some quit on day 1, but she kept going. Quiet, steady, focused. Her uniform soaked through with sweat, legs shaking by dawn, but still moving, still showing up. There was a moment on day 4 that everyone remembered. The candidates were told to carry a wounded dummy, over 200 pounds, through a quarter-mile obstacle course. One of the men groaned, frustrated. Guess she'll tap out now. Ellie didn't say a word. She just looked at the dummy, adjusted the harness, and started dragging, inch by inch, over walls, under barbed wire, through mud that swallowed boots whole. She didn't ask for help, didn't yell, didn't break. The entire compound watched as a woman they thought would fold like paper in rain just kept going. She finished dead last, but she finished. Even the instructors stopped smirking after that. But then came the sharpshooting tests, the one thing they figured would surely expose her. It wasn't just about hitting targets. It was stress-induced precision, firing after sprinting for half a mile, reloading under pressure, switching weapons mid-sequence, maintaining breath control in wind, heat, chaos. They lined up the candidates behind the range. Ellie was placed in the middle. Some of the men adjusted their ear protection. Others glanced at her with curiosity now, not cruelty. The signal was given. She began the sequence, and at first it was as expected. Her form was clean, controlled, but not flashy, until they noticed something. She wasn't missing. Every single shot hit center mass. Every reload was seamless. Every weapon transition was timed like a metronome. The spotters on the tower began leaning forward. An instructor pulled down his sunglasses. Another walked up to the control panel and started replaying the feed. Someone whispered, "Are you seeing this?" But it wasn't over yet. In the final phase, they introduced a series of long-range targets at 800 yards, some moving, some partially obscured, some placed at angles to test perception and depth. Ellie adjusted her scope, exhaled slowly, and started shooting. And again, every shot landed. Not near, not close, dead center. 800 yards. Moving targets. No misses, no hesitation. When she stood up, the field was silent. Even the wind seemed to pause. But before anyone could say a word, the lead instructor walked over, looked her in the eye, and muttered, "You ever done competition shooting?" Ellie just shook her head. "I grew up in Kansas," she said softly. My dad used to take me out every Sunday. Said a rifle is just an extension of your breath if you treat it right. No arrogance, no pride, just the truth. That night, as the rest of the candidates limped back to their bunks and compared bruises, Ellie sat alone, unlacing her boots. Her hands trembled, not from fear but from fatigue. Her face was streaked with dust. Her arms were raw, but her eyes burned with something no one could ignore anymore. And the men who had mocked her, they didn't say a word now, because deep down they all knew she wasn't just keeping up anymore. She was quietly leading, and they hadn't even reached the final test yet. They say every soldier carries something heavier than their pack. For most, it's regret. For others, pride. But for Ellie Maddox, it was something else. Something buried so deep, not even her closest friends back in Kansas ever knew the full story. On the 6th day of Delta Force selection, they moved into psychological warfare training, designed to break the mind rather than the body. Sleep deprivation, isolation, interrogation simulations, personal records dug up and used against them in cruel, cutting ways. For most, it was a blur, but for Ellie it was déjà vu. When they blindfolded her and dragged her into the black box room, no windows, no sound, no time, she didn't panic. When the voice on the intercom screamed her name over and over for hours, accusing her of betrayal, weakness, cowardice, she didn't flinch. The psychologist, monitoring her file, watched the screen in stunned silence. "She's been here before," one of them murmured, but they didn't know the half of it. 12 years earlier, Ellie had been recruited. Not by Delta, not by the Army, not by any official branch of the military. She was barely 18, brilliant with a rifle, faster on a keyboard than anyone in her county, and invisible, which made her valuable. She was approached by a shadow group, private, off the books. No name, no patch. They called her Echo. She signed on the dotted line, naive, thinking she'd serve her country from the shadows. But what they had her do wasn't defense. It was elimination. For nearly 3 years, she was dropped into volatile regions and ordered to neutralize threats. No trial, no name, just faces on paper and instructions. She never missed. Until Somalia. The file said weapons dealer. But the man she was told to kill turned out to be a father with no record, no cache of arms, just a quiet teacher caught in the wrong village at the wrong time. She hesitated, and they punished her for it, not with demotion, but erasure. They wiped her file, her code name, her record, left her in a desert compound to rot until a foreign aid worker found her unconscious from dehydration 3 days later. That was the last time she picked up a rifle, until now. Back at Fort Rexton, no one knew this past, not even the Delta instructors. All they saw was a woman too calm under fire, too comfortable with silence, and too steady on the trigger, and it unsettled them. On the 7th day, the real twist came. The instructors ran an unannounced night op, woke the candidates at 3 a.m., threw them into an ambush simulation in the forested hills behind the base. Blank rounds, controlled explosives, smoke, panic, orders shouted into the dark. Half the squadron split. 2 candidates got lost in the confusion. Ellie, instead of panicking, dropped to a crouch, closed her eyes for a moment and listened. Then she moved, without a flashlight, without speaking. And 10 minutes later, she returned, mud-soaked and dragging one of the missing candidates on her back. He had twisted his ankle in the ravine. She found the other behind a tree, frozen in fear. The instructors weren't impressed. They were rattled. "Who trained you?" one of them asked her, alone, in the debrief tent. She stared at the floor and simply said, "My father was in the Army." Not a lie, but not the whole truth either. The next morning, an anonymous file arrived at Fort Rexton's command center. No sender, no explanation, just a grainy image from 12 years ago. A woman perched on a rooftop in Afghanistan, half her face visible, sniper rifle in hand. It was her. The photo never should have existed. And yet, there was the commanding officer, a stern man named Colonel Abrams, stared at it for a long time, then called in the lead instructors and slammed it down on the desk. "Why is Echo trying out for Delta?" he asked. Silence. No one had an answer. That evening, during the qualification round for the advanced tactical course, something strange happened. Ellie's rifle jammed mid-sequence, a rifle she cleaned thoroughly every night, without fail. When she opened the chamber, she froze. There was sugar in the bolt. Deliberate sabotage. No one confessed. No one spoke. But Ellie looked around the range and saw it in their eyes. The quiet fear. The envy. Someone had tried to stop her. And yet, instead of backing down, she picked up the backup rifle, an older, heavier model unfamiliar to her, and completed the round anyway, flawlessly. That night, while the base lights dimmed and the wind carried a chill, Ellie sat alone at the end of the barracks hallway, her boots unlaced, a cloth wiping the borrowed rifle. She didn't cry, didn't rage. She just whispered one name into the darkness, Somalia, and then she said something else. "I'm not leaving until it's done right this time." What she meant, no one knew. Not yet, but the final test was coming. And it wouldn't be just another drill. It would be the moment she either claimed her redemption or vanished once again into the shadows from where she came. The final test was not announced. It never was. That's how Delta Force worked. Candidates were summoned just after dawn. Fog still blanketed the ground at Fort Rexton, soft and silent like the calm before a storm. 30 remained out of over 100 who had started the grueling selection weeks ago. Now they stood shoulder to shoulder in full gear, faces worn, boots muddied, hearts pounding. Among them, Ellie Maddox. Quiet, alone, watching. The instructors handed them sealed envelopes. Inside, just a single word: resolve. No map, no coordinates, just a riddle, and the understanding that they had 24 hours to complete the unknown challenge. One meant strip away every mask and reveal who they really were beneath the uniform. They were told to go. No questions. No teams. Ellie walked into the thick forest without a sound. 3 hours in, she reached a clearing and stopped. Something was wrong. The air felt too still. The forest too quiet. Then movement. Shadows between the trees. Not one, 3. Before she could react, a flashbang landed at her feet. White light, deafening crack. Darkness. When she woke, she was bound to a tree, arms behind her back. 3 masked men, obviously part of the enemy force, surrounded her. It was a test of capture resistance. But this wasn't routine. One leaned in and whispered words no one should have known. "Echo, you think you deserve a second chance." Her breath caught. These men were not just instructors. Someone had unearthed her past. Someone wanted her to break. "Why did you hesitate in Somalia?" the second hissed, circling her. She stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. "Answer!" the third snapped, shoving her shoulder. "Silence. You let a terrorist go free." "He wasn't a terrorist," Ellie said softly. "He was a father." A long pause. Then they cut her free and vanished into the woods. She stood there, heart pounding, wondering what was real and what was theater. But there was no time to unravel it. Night fell fast. The final stage of the test had begun. The legendary Raven shot. A sniper trial designed to weed out even the best. Only 5 candidates would be selected to fire. Ellie was not on the list. But as they gathered at the range, a sprawling valley lit by floodlights, targets barely visible at 1,500 meters, a commanding voice broke through the murmurs. "Wait!" Colonel Abrams stepped forward, holding a file. "I've amended the list," he said. Then his eyes locked on hers. "Maddox, you're up." Gasps rippled through the crowd. One of the male candidates muttered under his breath, "This is a joke. She wasn't even supposed to be here." But Ellie said nothing. She stepped forward, calm as always, and lay prone on the shooting platform. The rifle was unfamiliar. Heavy. Wind was variable. Targets barely visible in the dark. Then the test got harder. They brought out a mirrored set of 10 targets. Only one per row was a live hostile. The others represented civilians. Shoot wrong and fail. Everyone leaned in, watching, even the instructors. 10 shots. No room for hesitation. She exhaled. Focused, her breathing slowed. Her heartbeat matched the rhythm of her old training. Crack. First shot, bullseye. Crack. Second shot. Silent applause from the stunned instructors. She adjusted. Crosswind shifted. Her scope fogged. She wiped it once, hands trembling, but kept going. 6 shots. 7. 8. Then hesitation. Target 9 was familiar. Not the face, but the pose. The same as the teacher from Somalia. A haunting memory meant to rattle her. She blinked. Her vision blurred. Was this another trick? Then she noticed something. The grip of the rifle in the target's hands. The way the finger wasn't near the trigger. Not hostile. She held her breath and did not shoot. Gasped again. Whispers. She moved on. 10th shot. Crack. Silence. Then a siren blared. Test complete. The colonel walked over, holding a digital tablet with the scores. He stared down at her result, then back up at the crowd. Candidate Ellie Maddox, he announced, voice firm, steady, has just achieved the highest score in Raven shot history, including live combat veterans. The field went quiet. Even the instructors, hardened men and women who had seen it all, stood motionless. Ellie didn't smile, didn't cry. She just whispered, more to herself than anyone. This time, it was done right. Then, slowly, one of the previously mocking candidates stepped forward. He removed his cap and saluted. One by one, the others followed, until the same crowd that once whispered insults and dismissed her as a joke now stood in silent respect, saluting the woman they had underestimated. A woman with no official record, no powerful connections, and no loud bravado, just quiet precision and something more powerful than talent, unshakable resolve. Later that evening, Colonel Abrams approached her alone. There's a position open, he said. Delta doesn't usually make exceptions, but for you, we'll make history. Ellie looked out across the valley where her final test had unfolded, where her ghosts had been laid to rest. And for the first time in a very long time, she allowed herself a small smile. I'm not here to be history, she said. I'm here to rewrite it. And she did.